Today is the 24th of November, Springwater. The question comes up with people who come here for the first time, as well as those of us who have been here for a long time. What is it that we call this work? Why are we here? What am I coming here for? Also, we often talk about the fact how difficult it is when somebody says, "What are you doing there?" When you go to Springwater, when you sit in a retreat, when you're on staff, or just come for a visit, what is going on there? What are you doing? And the difficulty of explaining that. It's been mentioned for years and years and years by us. Somebody said, don't always say people. It sounds as though you're separating yourself from the rest of us, which I'm not. So I'll tackle this problem right now of what do we call this work? What is it that we're doing? Why we're here? And see how difficult or easy it is to talk about it. We can do this together, even though just one person is talking. Look at it and open up to this question of what is this work? When I was in Poland, my good friend and interpreter has told me repeatedly, I don't like this word work, and I surely won't put it into the translation of the book, because Polish people don't like to work. The word has a bad association, an onus to it. It's not a good word. There is no good word for describing what we're doing. What are we doing? We came upon the word work to substitute for the word practice, which had been and is still widely in use for meditation practice. And the word practice was dropped because it has implied in it the repetitiveness of doing something and the goal-orientedness of practicing in order to get better at something. Maybe even perfect. Besides, the word was so strongly associated with Zen practice, Zen work, and to drop all of this association, we chose the word work, which is not a perfect word, because it also implies effort. I have to work. Work is what makes one get more merits or good works in Christianity, to be on the right side of God. Or work hard, the Christian or Lutheran ethic, Protestant ethic, that through work we realize ourselves, or however way it was put. So we're not, at least I am not sticking to any words that we're using here. That is so true. We're not sticking to words. If anyone finds a better word to describe what is so hard and difficult to describe, let's bring it up. Let's consider it. Yet right now we don't have a better one. But we can still even leave that aside and just look at what are we doing in 25 minutes or 225 minutes of sitting quietly and walking around quietly. Maybe what is happening already depends on the auspices under which one came here, the idea of maybe getting a more peaceful mind, quieting down, one has that goal, that expectation or hope, getting enlightened, that hope may be in the mind someplace. And depending on what idea is in the mind of what one wants to attain or get to, then that will affect what is happening during these 25 minutes. And the effect often is that at one moment of coming to, of waking up what's happening, has been thought, has been going on, fantasies, emotions, or boredom. At that moment, the goal will click in. You're not doing well. You should do better. You are not quiet yet. What can you do to get more quiet? Or why all these thoughts? That's what imposed goals do. That's how they affect the sitting and listening and looking quietly. At a moment of waking up to the fact that there was noise in the mind, agitation, or just reveries, thinking about the past, thinking about the future. At the moment of becoming aware of this, the whole set and with which one came here and does this thing comes up with admonitions or commands. Stop thinking. Don't be emotional. How good are you doing? Are you concentrating more? So, what we call this work isn't setting a goal for oneself to become more peaceful, more quiet, more enlightened, less this, more that. It's not to set up any goal. But to wonder what it is that is going on at the moment of waking up. Waking up meaning a moment of attention. Because while there is no attention, the mind is in its habitual grooves, habitual thoughts, reactions, emotions, sensations, without awareness. Without awareness, there's no awareness. And thought has that capacity, thought and image and emotion all mixed in together, has that capacity of feigning reality. So while thinking of something nice that happened, or something frightening that happened, or something anger-arousing that happened, or anticipating something good or frightening that will happen, there's such involvement in it because it seems so real, so true. Because the body is pouring out all of its juices and chemicals in the presence of frightful or pleasant thoughts, giving the appearance or the feeling of reality in these thoughts and in this process. That's why it's so difficult to become aware that this is just a process going on of thought interweaving with sensations and emotions and more feelings and more thoughts and images. It's so difficult to just become aware of that simple fact because of the reality lent by the organism to the thoughts and images through its feelings, sensations, tensions, stressful emotions, grieving, and so forth. I'm planning not to talk the whole hour that is allocated to this time, but to have some time for people to ask or comment, if possible, on this particular topic that we are looking at right now. So, can, in the course of emoting anger, fearful feelings, happy feelings, pleasant emotions, or the feeling of boredom, anxiety, and be a moment of waking up, a moment of attention. Of course there can be. It happens all the time to everybody. That's what happens to human beings. The amazing thing, it does. Waking up for a moment of realizing there has been dreaming or fantasizing or emoting and so forth. And if we didn't come here in order to find peace and quiet or get enlightened, become a better human being, but out of needing to be in touch with what's really going on, interested in it, also realizing that without attention, the very often very destructive and chaotic responses, habitual conditioned responses just keep on running and perpetuating one's own and each other's misery. Realizing all that and having no program of what to do here other than what is going on, then at a moment of attention there won't be immediately this train of blame on oneself, fault-finding. The old programs of shape up, do better, be attentive, stop thinking, how good am I, how bad I am. All of this doesn't have to enter in because the mind and body isn't set in that way. It hasn't been programmed to achieve something in the light of which it will inevitably judge itself with more thought, more comments. Can one test that or see it instantly that this is so? Or test it out anytime? First of all, test out, is there already a goal set? So the computer is already programmed in a certain way. And then experiencing whatever comes up under the auspices of this program. Is there such a thing? Not, there shouldn't be. We're not saying that. We're looking at what it does. We're looking right now at this process of setting goals. Questioning that, becoming aware of what it does. Which is not a condemnation of it. It's not saying it shouldn't be or get rid of it. That's important, isn't it, to mention that too? Because under the auspices of that ancient program, what I'm doing is bad and I should get better and stop what is bad. Under that program, there can't be the openness of looking what's actually happening. Setting goals, living in the standard, right and wrong, all of it inhibits or prevents the open emerging. No, what is there emerges at a moment of attention, it's there. But the inability to really look at it instantly without any framework, without any preset stuff, or else awareness of the preset stuff at that moment, as it says, bad, good, change, don't, do, to let that all reveal itself in a moment of waking up, which happens to human beings. Maybe happens to dolphins too, and whales. animals. We don't know, we can't discuss this. We're not trying to single ourselves out as the superior accomplishment of evolution. It's very questionable. So, is what we call very lightly, not insistingly, this work to find out what this body-mind is doing at the moment of coming to, moment of wake up, an instant of attention. Whether sitting alone or being engaged in a conversation with a friend or in a meeting with people, staff meeting, trustees meeting, for a moment to wake up and listen to what's going on. Inside, outside, between ourselves, each other, the emotions that are there, the wants, the fears, and their inhibiting effects. Because at the moment I want something or I'm afraid of something, it's quite noticeable if attention is given how the senses narrow down, they squeeze together. They don't allow this free, open flow of information. It's in this, under the auspices of fear, under the auspices of what I want to achieve. The senses are squeezed into a narrow channel, rather openly aware of what's here. In myself, in you, in our interrelationship. And over the hills, in the trees, on the ground. Somebody recently said, and it happens all the time, you have your way and I have my way, and there are different ways of working. I wondered about that. Of course there are different ways of working, different ways of splitting wood or cleaning a house, different ways of attaining concentration, different ways of concentrating on things, employing the body, employing different parts to concentrate on. Different things that are important to one person, important to another person. There are differences, what we assign importance to. But what we're talking about right now, this open awareness, open attention, clarity, if you will, the clarity that the senses aren't squeezed by any programs of wanting or fearing. They're open. Because it's possible for senses to be wide open, the mind to be open when there's no program running of what I want, what I'm afraid of, what I should be doing. In that being, in that openness, there is no way of yours or mine. We may use different words to describe it, to describe open listening. Last week someone said, when you say, look at it, that confuses me, or that doesn't seem right. There is no one who's looking, it's just experiencing. All right, let's drop looking at. Let's drop, if that's confusing, because the words cannot describe it. Nobody's words can. Because this state is not capturable by words. Words are always introduce some kind of dualism and some kind of abstraction and removal from the wide openness of what's there, inside, outside, without any separation. So if you say, let's not say look at it, let's say experiencing it, all right, then we'll use that word, but the word is not that state of no division. The words that you and I use may be different ways of describing, but the openness of no separation is not different for you or me. It's not a way. We may think we come to it through certain ways of behaving, asking, being, questioning, and those may differ for all of us. But asking, behaving, describing is not that state of openness. And it may not be causally linked to that at all. As a matter of fact, I'm quite sure nothing is causally linked to that state of open attending without division, without feeling of separation. And it just happens to a human being and maybe to a dolphin. And something that has no reference to a past accumulated string and bundle of things called me. Remembered stuff, anticipated stuff, wanted stuff, feared stuff. It's very palpably feelable that is a certain way of being in which attention is partial or not there at all. Whereas in the what we call right now tentatively listening or looking or openness, in that the brain is not called upon to interpret, know, judge, and so one can feel it. The brain isn't called upon to do that. So it's quiet. It's just listening and looking. And if it's asked, how do you call that, brain? Brain says, I call that looking at it. I call that listening. I call that experiencing. And depending on who knows, your brain may call it something different. But we need to look and listen again to also see, does that really express it fairly accurately? And that at that moment there is no verbalization, there's just looking and listening. And all right, the word is whatever it can do. I wonder whether enough has already been said that we could listen to some questions, somebody wanting to ask something. Oh, I hereby using the word question, I remember someone asking me just a day ago or two, what do you mean by questioning? We'll throw this into. Because our words already have pre-established histories and associations for all of us. When one hears a word, that's what is brought to bear. That's how one interprets the word. And what the person asked me was, do you always question everything? Is that endless? Always questioning everything that comes up? So let's quickly talk about that. What is meant when the word questioning is used? depends on what it is one is questioning. If I'm questioning why I get upset, let's say if I get upset and I want to know, what is this state right now? Why is it coming up? What's going on? What do I do? I got upset over something. The basement is messy, let's say that. Coming home, the basement is messy. I feel upset. Well, now here, in a quiet room, with some time to allow stuff to come up about the upset over a messy basement, stuff does come up if I wonder why the upset over a messy basement. Allow images, words, ideas, stuff to come up, because the question has been asked. All kinds of stuff may come up. My very habitual discomfort with messiness. Why? Why the discomfort with messiness? Well, I've always been told things should be in order, and when things were in order, then nobody bitched at you. But I wonder, is that all? That's another question. Wanting to put things away so they're out of sight, I don't see them. That looks good. Does it involve also how it looks to others? If somebody came to see the house, the new house, and the basement looked messy, is there that consideration? What will he or she think of me? I always passed for an orderly person, and here this messy basement, the identification with it and fear for one's image. And one feels also the anxiety that comes up with these thoughts and images. This is all allowed to express itself, if you will. It's not suppressed. And maybe there are thoughts how to put this basement in order, when to take time or find time. This is all going on under this question, why the upset? Is that all that goes on? Allowing imagery and feelings and past associations, memories to come up and reveal themselves for causing this upset? Is that all? Because that can go endlessly. It can go on endlessly, because everything is associated with everything else forever in the past and can be projected into the future. Or can there also, in sitting here in a big spacious room with an hour or so of no demands, nothing I have to do, didn't set myself a goal, but the messy basement came up. Can, in this quiet setting, having looked at all of this stuff, it's revealed itself, it's been seen, is it also possible that this whole thing drops? It's been looked at, it's been questioned, this stuff has come up, it's been felt, it's been seen for what it is, also seen for continuing endlessly if the thoughts about it continue, the projections, the explanations, the taking it to the past. All of this has happened, has been looked at, and it's understood that as long as this goes on, it goes on. And the brain is called upon to deal with things, with stuff inside. That's understood and seen. Not just thought about, but it's clear. And in that clarity, can it drop the whole thing? Not it should drop, we're not saying that, we're wondering. Or we're wondering at a moment of seeing it has dropped, and the mind isn't occupied with it anymore. It's finished. One can test it out, how finished is it, by bringing it up again, artificially, as it were. Bring that basement up again into the front room. And it doesn't create anxiety or upset anymore, because the mind is open now in listening or attending, or use none of those words. Open, in touch with what? The clearing of the throat, the breath, maybe a wind stirring or someone moving, the feeling of the hands on the cloth. It's not involved in these demand situations. Do something about this, or question it, resolve it. It's open, and it doesn't know what it is like. It's not interested in itself in that way. How am I doing? Am I doing well or not? It's just open. Is that a state of questioning? Maybe we don't need to call it that way at all. But it's a state of open, not knowing and not needing to know. So we talked about what is it that we call this work, and the different ways, different your way and my way. We talked about that. Setting goals and what the goals do. Wondering just what is happening. Does anyone want to say something or add to it, question it? Disagree with it?
Toni, when you say opening, being open just happens, without anything one does, or implying that, it gives the impression, or can give the impression, that it doesn't matter what you're doing. And yet, if you're not looking, observing what's happening, the chance of it happening, of being open, is much less. It's not to say it won't happen, because it does seem to happen for everyone. At some time or other, often periods of great stress or whatever. It just happens. But it seems to happen more if you begin to just attend, if you want to use that word, to what it is you're doing. And in some sense, it's almost a matter of looking at how close you are all the time.
How closed?
How close you are.
Yes.
And in how many ways you close it off.
Yes. Yeah.
How you become the very common mind-body separation that we have in this culture where people talk about, well, I've got to get my body in shape, or whatever. Or the thought of well, all these thoughts are bothering me, as opposed to just, well, what's going on?
Yeah, what's going on? And a genuine interest in it.
Or even getting caught in your thoughts and running and being aware that that's what you're doing.
Well, how did that awareness happen? That you realize you're running with your thoughts? Because you're interested ultimately. Is that it? I don't know. Maybe. It seems that there seems to be something of that sort. Some kind of, not immediate cause and effect, but more likely, more probability.
It sometimes seems almost as if you reach a point where there's no choice. You either have to do it. You have to be to look. Because it becomes sufficiently painful not to.
Not to look.
Not to look.
Well, it fuses as to what we're talking about, whether we're talking about looking, or we're talking about a state where there's that openness and a question of even looking or whatever isn't there. And I wouldn't say that had any cause, so I'm not sure about the relevance at that moment, except as one think about it and reflect on it. And sometimes it seems to happen in the midst of some turmoil. So,
Do you want to respond?
Yeah. The thing is that it's if openness just happens when you're open, but it doesn't it doesn't happen, and you can't say, well, this is why it happened. But it seems to happen a lot more often if you're looking and observing and being aware, and ultimately if you're doing it in a way, to me it seems, if you're quote unquote looking, then you're not open, but you're aware of your closeness. And if you continually become aware of this, it seems to facilitate being open, and also perhaps when you are open, not closing off just like that, almost immediately.
Which happens, doesn't it? It's just the right stimulus coming up. Right, I don't mean.
Toni, when we talk about being open, what's open?
What is it that it's open?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing.
What?
You mean, what is it that is open? Is there a thing that is open?
Yeah.
Is that what you're asking?
Some teachers talk about the heart being open. You talk about the senses being open.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Heart, senses, all one. It's not a division between the heart and the intellect and the senses. Openness means not closedness, not a program in action.
Does it also mean not separate?
Yes.
Not divided?
Not divided. Because that me circus is not energized, is quiet. Which separates the senses and closes the heart. And engages the intellect in its own goals and programs. That's quiet. The energy isn't there. But without reflection, as you asked, well, what is it that is open? If you don't think about, now, what do I have to say that is open? Then you can say nothing. It's just everything is there. Openness has sort of a relationship to closeness. Before I was closed, now I'm open. And yet, as far as senses, heart, the body, there's probably something that could, on a test needle, be found as the state is different now from the closedness. There's something about the listening or seeing or the heart. But it's without tension, without program.
That sounds very absolute. Is openness or closeness a relative thing where you can be more or less closed down or more or less open and perceiving?
I don't know whether there's a more or less in openness, but there can, I don't know that. But there can certainly be constant fluctuations, which may be perceived as partial openness also. A moment of openness and then zingo, something happens. It gets engaged in the eye circuit. I don't know whether in this state of openness, when you say absolute, the word I read once means dependent on nothing. In that sense, maybe an appropriate word. If you mean by absolute forever after, no.
No, I didn't mean it in a time frame, but
And what? How do you mean it?
In that it seems that there are, in my own experience, there are degrees of openness in myself and other people. Sometimes we wake up from something and realize that we've been engaged in this thought, and we look around and we're to some degree or another aware of what's going on around us or in us. And other times we may be much more so. Maybe we're walking along, we walk for several hours or something, and it's a beautiful day, and it just seems to go right down to the very core of our being. And it just seems that there is a difference in degree there.
I hear what you're saying. But is it this of going back and forth easy, or a certain stability in a depth of one's core, the way you put it, whatever that is? Because if you look for a core, there isn't any. Depth is it seems to be a good word if we also use it cautiously and not mean depth in comparison to height or something like that. But at this instant, nothing could shake. What I mentioned before, thinking of the messy basement, or somebody who may have so excited one yesterday by a nice remark or a mean remark, bring it up, and it just doesn't connect. The thought does not connect with the emotions. The things are open, and that is what you call the depth, like walking on a beautiful day. If you're meaning, when you said, that sounds very absolute, what you're saying. If you mean, I'm questioning that, and I'm going to look, you do what you do, but I'm going to look, is there some place a feeling that there is a me who has this state? Or some kind of a feeling of separation? And that's a good question. And is there or isn't there? It can reveal itself quite clearly. Oh, there's a thought. I've got it made, or I've got it, or I'll never get it quite the way he does or she. So it's not this openness without borderlines of me. So let's look at that. Whenever one has the feeling, I've got it, this is it. Who says that? What is going on as this is being said? Image again coming up? Or in looking there's no image. There's no one there. There's no storyline about myself or the state. It's just that is not active. It's not there.
Toni, in the talk you mentioned about being in that state and yet in the midst of meetings or talking with people, and I'm sort of wondering about that because it seems there's its history and facts and all that is coming into play, which is going to be somewhat different between and amongst the people involved. I think it's possible it happens, and again, I would have to say, in a deep way, seems to happen on its own, that there's sort of a dissociation from the whole thing in the midst of it, in a way, for a moment maybe, or that might happen. I'm not questioning that, but there seems to be a difference between the entire activity itself and being involved in it, and how removed one may be in the sense of not being tremendously identified with what's put out or whatever, and not being engaged in that kind of activity.
And yet hold in mind what the meeting is there for. Hold in mind what it is that needs to be discussed. You could say dissociating. You used the word disassociating oneself, which would mean dropping, not holding in mind anymore what it is we're meeting about.
Well, it'd be nice at some moment if there was that clear in a way, you know. It's like it was just the people there and whatever's being said.
Yeah.
It was really that kind of.
Yeah. But if all of us dissociated completely from the topic, we dropped that. It's not of any importance anymore. Well, I don't know whether much damage would be done, because usually usually the things we decide and want to build a shed or so, maybe the shed would never be built and the wood would lie to rot.
I thought Stu meant dissociate personal involvement with the topic. I mean, it's very important to discuss some things, but you always know, like what Sam said about awareness of how closed you are, being what openness is a great deal of the time. There's always that nagging, even when you're trying your hardest to remain closed. You know, it's always there.
And is it possible not to be personally involved and yet not drop the concern which has brought us together to discuss something, decide something?
What is concerned at that moment? I'm just wondering,
The situation
personal
demands.
Just this, but we're all able to
Yeah.
identify with whether it's getting, making sure the wood, whatever it is, that
Yeah.
the building, because we could easily say, well, it's not me, it's but we identify with.
Well, but do we have to be identified to be concerned that the building not rot, the wood not rot, the budget not be irresponsible and whatever? Does that need personal identification, or do facts, if one can see them without personal nagging or fear or desire, do they speak for themselves and therefore elicit responses? Intelligent responses.
Which then demands that we have to be clear what's fact.
Yeah. And what's personal involved. And what's personal identity or identification. What I want for my place, or to be seen as a responsible person.
But history is full of people who acted supposedly not out of personal interest, but out of what they considered was fact, and really an intelligent thing had to be done. And upon reflection, you look back and you realize how little really was fact, and how much almost everything is really personal.
Let's stick with the wood. The wood, which is used for a wood heating furnace, getting wet and in heating the furnace, or talking to the people who operate it, saying it develops tremendous steam, it develops creosote in the chimney, having had a chimney fire or the alarm going off from steam, all of this stuff is fact. And out of this arises the question, can we get it together to build a woodshed to protect this wood from getting so wet? Because one may have been wrong, the creosote fire may not have been from wet wood, there may be other factors in it, and we may never know all the facts, I agree with that. But when you see history is full of people who acted on fact, I'm wondering about that, whether history is so full of people. Are we like that we act on fact? Because you immediately said that there cannot be a separation from fact and personal identification. And that I'm wondering about, whether it can't. I wouldn't take that for a working assumption. I'd leave it open. We may have done it very little or not at all, but that doesn't mean it can't happen now. At rare moments, maybe.
We're often very selective with the facts that we look at based on maybe certain agendas that we have, so that maybe we don't see certain aspects that would lead us to build a woodshed, because we are only looking at certain things and we only allow ourselves to look at certain aspects. The woodshed is probably not a good example. But I see myself frequently, certain facts trigger emotional responses in me, whereas others don't. And I see myself responding to the things that have pushed buttons in me, and it's made it difficult for me to look at other issues, and to be open to them until I try to be aware, or something helps me. It suddenly occurs to me that I'm not looking at everything, and someone brings it up and shows me that.
And then at that moment, not to be so defensive of one's position that again one can't hear, which happens. We become our position, or our triggered buttons and our point of view, as though we had to defend our life with that, which is again something the brain is not very clear about, what is really dangerous. Life-threatening. Or what is the right action in the face of life-threateningness? What have you observed for yourself?
That it is.
It is connected?
Somehow.
What is it that is connected? You're sitting quietly and then getting up and walking.
One thing I've observed is that it's pleasant.
Both of it.
To walk.
Oh, to walk.
To sit. The openness is, I'm not sure how that's connected.
Or you may not know how it's connected, but is there openness in sitting and openness in walking? Certain in touchness with quietness. And therefore the feel of the legs moving and the feel of the body still. Right now the sound of the saw or whatever that is. And breathing and sounds of people moving. And this body moving or still. The awareness of all of that. And then in getting up, is immediately thinking, oh, how long will this walking last? Why are we walking? Oh, this person walks funny and he has her hands in the pocket. That's not very respectful, thinking. Or is in getting up, there's still that saw buzzing. There's still the breathing going on. Now the body is moving. And as the floor moves by, as it were. Dark holes and the windows looking out in the oak there. Is it still seeing it? Still quiet? Or is also, there can be another continuity, thinking all kinds of thoughts while sitting and thinking all kinds of thoughts while walking. It's one continuity. I'm not saying it's bad, that's what happens. Or is out of the quietness of still sitting also a quietness in moving? For moments at a time, not trying to set up the program of attaining perfection.
Also an aspect too, if something does come up and that one's aware of, wonders about, that doesn't need to end in a sitting either. That one may be sitting with something, but it's something that's with one. If it's of concern, or maybe in a quiet way, but they're
Walking or sitting. Whatever is there that is of some concern, occupies the mind, is taken around for a walk. Which means there is something else also going on. There's some spaciousness. Or there's complete unawareness, but I don't know, you're not talking about that.
I was thinking more even just, not just walking, but whatever I was doing. There wasn't the separation of sitting and the rest of one's life or something.
further questions? And we'll end it for today.